The letter trembled in Duke Alistair Wren's hand, not from the wind tearing through the open window, but from the rage coursing through his veins. Rain hammered the study windows like accusations. Betrayal. The word tasted like ash. He looked up at the woman standing across from him, soaked from the storm, her dark hair plastered to her pale face. Lady Evelyn Hart, his wife, said nothing. She didn't cry, didn't beg. She simply slipped the ring from her finger and placed it in his palm, her eyes holding his for one unbearable moment before she turned toward the door. "Get out," he whispered. And she did. But what if the letter was a lie? Stay with me through this story. Watch until the very end and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this journey travels. Hit that like button. You won't regret it. The estate was silent except for the storm. Alistair Wren stood in the doorway of his study, watching the rain carve rivers down the glass. His coat dripped onto the Persian rug his mother had brought from Constantinople decades ago. He didn't care. The letter in his hand had turned soft from his grip, edges curling, ink beginning to smear. He'd read it 7 times on the ride home. Each time, the words gutted him fresh. "Your Grace, it pains me to inform you of what honor demands I reveal. Your wife has been seen in the company of Lord Nathaniel Ashford on 3 separate occasions, twice in locations far from prying eyes. The last meeting occurred at the Belmont Inn, where they remained for several hours. I would not burden you with this knowledge were I not certain of its truth. A loyal friend. No signature, no name, just the careful script of someone who knew exactly how to twist the blade." Alistair crumpled the letter and threw it into the fire. It caught quickly, curling black, the wax seal melting into nothing. He wished he could burn the images from his mind just as easily. Evelyn laughing with Ashford. Evelyn disappearing into some shadowed inn. Evelyn lying next to him night after night with a secret tucked behind her soft smiles. He heard footsteps in the corridor. Light. Familiar. She appeared in the doorway, still wearing the deep green gown she'd worn to the garden party that afternoon. Her hair was coming loose from its pins, damp from the rain she'd walked through to get back to the house. She looked tired. No, she looked wary, like she knew. "Alistair." Her voice was steady, but her hands were clasped too tight in front of her. "You're home earlier than I expected." He turned from the fire, and the look on his face must have been answer enough because she stopped moving. Froze right there in the center of the room, like prey that knows the hunter has its scent. "Where were you today?" he asked. "The Harringtons' garden party. You knew that." "After." She blinked. "I came home. Before that." "Alistair, what—" "Answer the question, Evelyn." Her jaw tightened. Just a fraction, just enough for him to see. "I stopped by the modiste. Then I came home." "Alone?" "My maid was with me." "Not a gentleman? Not someone you've been spending your afternoons with?" The color drained from her face. "What are you talking about?" He crossed the room in 3 strides, stopping just short of her, close enough to see the pulse in her throat, the faint line between her brows. "Don't lie to me. Not now. Not after everything." "I'm not lying." Lord Nathaniel Ashford. Her eyes widened, just for a second, just long enough for him to see recognition flicker there, and that was what broke him. "You know him." It wasn't a question. "Of course I know him. He's your colleague in Parliament. I've met him at a dozen dinners, Alistair. This is absurd." "You met him at the Belmont Inn." She went still, completely, unnaturally still. "You were seen," he continued, voice dropping to something dangerous. 3 times. Twice in private. Once at that inn, where you stayed for hours." "That's not—" She stopped herself, swallowed, tried again. "That's not what happened." "Then tell me what did." "I can't." The words hit him like a fist to the chest. "You can't? It's not what you think." "Then explain it to me!" His voice cracked through the room, loud enough to echo off the high ceiling. "Explain why my wife has been sneaking around London with another man. Explain why you're lying to my face right now. I'm not— You just said you can't tell me the truth. Because it's not mine to tell." Silence slammed down between them. Evelyn's chest rose and fell too quickly. Her hands were shaking now, but she didn't step back, didn't look away. "What does that mean?" Alistair's voice had gone quiet again, cold. It means, she said slowly, carefully, that I was asked to keep a confidence, and I did. That's all. A confidence. He laughed, bitter. With Ashford. Yes. About what? I told you, I can't say. You're protecting him. I'm protecting someone who trusted me. Over your own husband. She flinched, barely, but he saw it. Alistair, please. Her voice softened, broke just a little. You have to trust me. I did trust you. He turned away from her, walked back to the fire, stared into the flames. I gave you everything, my name, my home, my... He stopped, couldn't say it. And you gave me lies. I never lied to you. You're lying right now. I'm not. Frustration bled into her tone now, sharpening it. I met with Lord Ashford because he asked for my help. That's the truth. If you would just listen, to what? More excuses? More secrets? To me. He turned back to face her, looked at this woman he'd married 2 years ago in a ceremony that felt like a fairy tale. She'd worn white lace and orange blossoms. She'd smiled at him like he hung the moon. He'd believed they would build something real together, something that mattered. Now he didn't know what he was looking at. I'm giving you one chance, he said quietly. Right now. Tell me the truth. All of it. Or we're done. Her throat worked. Her eyes searched his face like she was looking for something, some crack in the wall he'd built, some sign that he might actually believe her if she spoke. But he'd already made up his mind, hadn't he? The letter had done its job. The seed was planted. The doubt had taken root. I can't, she whispered. That was it. The last thread snapped. Alistair reached into his pocket, pulled out a small velvet pouch, and emptied it onto his desk. Her wedding ring, the one he'd placed on her finger in front of half of London's elite, clinked against the wood. Then take it off. Evelyn stared at the ring. At him. Back at the ring. You don't mean that. I do. Alistair, take it off. Her hands moved slowly, mechanically. She twisted the gold band, simple, elegant, engraved with words only they knew, and slid it free. For a moment she just held it, staring down at the small circle of metal like it might offer some answer she didn't have. Then she crossed to the desk and placed it next to the empty pouch. I loved you, she said. Her voice didn't shake, didn't waver. It was just empty. I still do. But you've already decided I'm guilty, so there's nothing left to say. She turned and walked toward the door. Where do you think you're going? His words stopped her. She glanced back over her shoulder. You told me to leave. In the morning. You'll leave in the morning, with your things, and whatever dignity you have left. No. He blinked. What? I'm leaving now. She looked him dead in the eye. Because I won't spend another minute in a house where the man I married thinks I'm a liar and a cheat. You want me gone? I'm gone. Before he could respond, she disappeared into the corridor. He stood there listening to her footsteps fade, listening to doors open and close upstairs, listening to the storm rage outside. He told himself he'd done the right thing. She wouldn't explain, wouldn't defend herself. That was as good as a confession. Wasn't it? 20 minutes later, he heard the front door open. He moved to the window, watched as Evelyn walked down the front steps into the rain. No coat, no umbrella, just the dress she'd been wearing and a small bag clutched in one hand. The gatekeeper called out to her. He could see the man's mouth moving, but she didn't stop, didn't even slow down. She walked through the gates, into the dark, into the storm, and Alistair let her go. Morning came gray and cold. Alistair woke slumped in his study chair, neck stiff, head pounding. The fire had died hours ago. The house was too quiet. He stood, joints cracking, and walked through rooms that suddenly felt too large, too empty. He found her wedding ring still on the desk where she'd left it. He picked it up, turned it over in his palm. The engraving caught the weak morning light. Fidelis ad finem, faithful to the end. He'd chosen those words himself, thought they meant something. The knock on the study door made him shove the ring into his pocket. Enter. His butler Graves stepped inside. The man was 70 if he was a day, had served the Wren family since before Alistair was born. He looked troubled, Your Grace, forgive the intrusion, but there's been talk among the staff. I don't pay you to gossip, Graves. No, sir, but you do pay me to keep you informed. The old man hesitated. Lady Wren's maid came to me this morning, said her mistress never returned to her room last night, said she left through the front door and didn't come back. I know, I sent her away. Graves' expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. Disappointment, maybe, or disapproval. I see. And may I ask where she's gone? That's no longer my concern. Your Grace? That will be all, Graves. The butler bowed stiffly and left. Alistair sat back down at his desk, pulled out a stack of correspondence, tried to focus on estate business. Tried not to think about Evelyn walking through the rain with nowhere to go. She had family, friends. She'd be fine. She'd made her choice. The days blurred together. Alistair threw himself into work. Parliament sessions, estate management, social obligations he couldn't avoid. People asked about Evelyn, politely, carefully, with that particular tone the aristocracy used when they smelled scandal. He gave vague answers. She's visiting family, she's unwell, she's away for a time. No one believed him. Whispers spread like fire through dry kindling. By the end of the first week, half of London knew the Duke of Wren had cast out his wife. By the end of the second, they were inventing reasons why. Gambling debts, secret affairs, a pregnancy that wasn't his. The rumors grew teeth. Alistair ignored them all. Buried himself deeper in work, in routine, in anything that kept him from thinking about the empty space across from him at breakfast, the unused side of the bed, the silence that filled the house like fog. It was Graves who finally broke through. 3 weeks after Evelyn left, the butler appeared in the study with tea Alistair hadn't asked for, and a look on his face that meant he had something to say, whether Alistair wanted to hear it or not. What is it, Graves? Your Grace, I've served your family for 43 years. I'm aware. Then you'll forgive me for speaking plainly. Alistair set down his pen. Go on. You've made a mistake. The words sat heavy in the air between them. That's not your place to say. Perhaps not. But I knew Lady Wren, watched her these past 2 years. She wasn't the kind of woman to betray her vows. You don't know what she did. And neither do you. Alistair's jaw tightened. I had proof. A letter. Graves's voice was careful, neutral. From an anonymous source, accusing your wife of infidelity, and you took it as gospel without asking a single question. She wouldn't explain. She said she couldn't. That's different. It's the same thing. Is it? The old man's eyes were sharp, too sharp. If someone asked you to keep a confidence, a matter of honor perhaps, or someone else's reputation, would you break that trust? Even for your wife? Alistair opened his mouth, closed it. You're a man of principle, Your Grace. You value honor, loyalty, duty. You always have. Graves poured the tea with steady hands. Seems to me Lady Wren valued the same things, and you punished her for it. You don't understand. I understand you loved her. I understand you were hurt, and I understand that fear makes us cruel sometimes. He set the teacup in front of Alistair, but cruelty doesn't make us right. He left before Alistair could respond. Alistair sat there, staring at the tea cooling in its cup, feeling something cold and sharp working its way under his ribs. Fear makes us cruel. Was that what he'd done? Let fear of betrayal, of being made a fool, of losing control, turn him into the kind of man who threw his wife out into a storm without even listening? He reached into his pocket, pulled out the ring he'd been carrying like a talisman, or a curse. Fidelis ad finem, faithful to the end. She'd been faithful, right until the moment he'd stopped believing in her. The realization hit him like a physical blow. He surged to his feet, crossed to the window, pressed his forehead against the cold glass. What have I done? The words came out barely a whisper. No one answered. It was another week before the cracks in the story started showing. Alistair had begun asking questions. Discreet ones at first, inquiries among mutual acquaintances about Ashford, about Evelyn's movements, about anything that might confirm or deny what the letter had claimed. The answers he got back were strange. Lord Nathaniel Ashford, it turned out, had left London 3 days after Evelyn disappeared. Abruptly. No explanation. His estate steward claimed he'd gone to Scotland on urgent business. His colleagues in Parliament said he'd cited a family emergency. No one had heard from him since. And the Belmont Inn, the supposed scene of the affair, didn't exist. Alistair confirmed it himself. Wrote out to the address mentioned in the letter. Found a butcher shop that had been there for 20 years. The owner had never heard of a Belmont Inn. Neither had his neighbors. Neither had anyone else in that part of the city. The letter had lied. Someone had fabricated the entire thing. The meetings, the location, probably even the relationship between Evelyn and Ashford. All of it carefully constructed to look just real enough to be believed. And Alistair had believed it. Without question. Without hesitation. He stood in his study that night, staring at the place where he'd burned the letter, wishing desperately that he'd kept it, that he could study it now, trace its origins, find whoever had done this, and what? The damage was done. Your Grace. Graves appeared in the doorway. His face was grim. You need to see something. He followed the butler to the servants' quarters, down a narrow corridor he rarely visited. Graves stopped outside a small room, the quarters belonging to Evelyn's lady's maid, Martha. The room was empty, stripped bare. No clothes, no personal effects, nothing. When did she leave? Alistair asked. The same night as Lady Wren. But I didn't think anything of it at the time, assumed she'd followed her mistress. But she didn't. Graves held out a piece of paper. One of the footmen found this in the kitchen yesterday, tucked behind the flour bins. Alistair took it, unfolded it. It was a bank receipt. A deposit slip for £50, a fortune for a servant, made the day before Evelyn left. The account holder's name was Martha Finch. £50, Alistair said slowly. Where would she get that kind of money? She wouldn't, not honestly. Someone paid her. Yes, sir. I believe someone did. The pieces started clicking together. Martha had been with Evelyn constantly. Would have known her schedule, her movements, her associations. Would have been perfectly positioned to feed information to someone who wanted to build a case against her. Find her, Alistair said. I don't care what it costs. Find Martha Finch and bring her to me. Graves bowed. Already have men looking, Your Grace. Good. Alistair stared at the receipt, at the evidence of a conspiracy he'd been too blind to see. And Graves? Find out everything you can about that letter, where it came from, who delivered it. I want names. Of course, sir. But even as he gave the orders, even as he began pulling at the threads of the plot that had destroyed his marriage, Alistair knew the truth. It didn't matter who had sent the letter. It didn't matter who had paid Martha or fabricated the inn or spread the lies. Because in the end, he was the one who had believed them. He was the one who had refused to listen. He was the one who had taken Evelyn's love, her loyalty, her trust, and thrown it all back in her face. He was the one who had destroyed her. And now she was gone. The investigation took another 2 weeks. Graves worked miracles, called in favors, leaned on contacts, followed leads that seemed impossibly thin. Slowly, painstakingly, he pieced together the truth. Martha Finch had fled to the coast. She'd been found in a boarding house in Dover, about to board a ship to France. When confronted, she'd broken quickly, guilt and fear making her easy to crack. She confessed everything. She'd been approached 6 weeks before Evelyn's departure. A gentleman, well-dressed, well-spoken, offering more money than she'd see in 5 years of service. All she had to do was provide information about Lady Wren's schedule and associations. Nothing too specific, nothing that seemed dangerous. She'd thought it was just gossip. Rich people spying on other rich people. Harmless. Then came the second payment, twice as large, with instructions to make sure certain information reached the Duke. About meetings that never happened. About an inn that didn't exist. Did she see his face? Alistair asked Graves. They were back in the study. Martha was being held at a constable's office, waiting to be formally charged. No, sir. He wore a hood, kept to shadows, but she remembered his voice, said it was educated, upper class, and he had a ring, heavy gold, with a crest she couldn't quite make out. That describes half of Parliament. Yes, sir. But there's more. Graves set a folder on the desk. I traced the money. The payments to Martha came from an account at Barings Bank. The account belongs to a shell company, but I pushed hard enough and found the real owner. Who? Victor Thornhill. Alistair went cold. Thornhill. One of his oldest rivals in Parliament. They'd clashed dozens of times over policy, over power, over positions Thornhill thought should have been his. But this, orchestrating the destruction of Alistair's marriage, framing an innocent woman, this was beyond political maneuvering. This was personal. Why? Alistair's voice came out rough. What did he gain? Your distraction, sir. Your weakness. While you were dealing with the scandal, Thornhill pushed through 3 major votes you would have opposed. Consolidated alliances you would have blocked. By the time you noticed, the damage was done. Alistair slumped back in his chair. He destroyed my marriage for political advantage. Yes, sir. And I let him. The words tasted like poison. I let him tear apart everything I had because I was too proud, too stubborn, too... He couldn't finish. Graves said nothing. There was nothing to say. Where is Evelyn? Alistair asked finally. Do we know? No, sir. She's disappeared completely. If she's reached out to family or friends, they're not saying. I've had inquiries made, but... He trailed off. It's been nearly 2 months, Your Grace. If she doesn't want to be found, keep looking. Sir, I don't care how long it takes. I don't care what it costs. Find her. Alistair stood, paced to the window, stared out at the grounds where Evelyn used to walk every morning. I have to fix this. Your Grace. Graves's voice was gentle, sad. Some things can't be fixed, only endured. I won't accept that. You may not have a choice. But Alistair wasn't listening anymore. He was already planning, already thinking about where Evelyn might have gone, who she might have turned to, how he could track her down and bring her home and make her understand. Make her understand what? That he was sorry, that he'd been wrong, that he'd believed lies and broken her heart and thrown her away like she meant nothing? Words wouldn't be enough. Nothing would be enough. But he had to try. He started the next morning, abandoned his duties in Parliament, handed off his estate management to his steward, and set out with a single goal: find Evelyn. He went to her family first, her father's estate in Devonshire, where she'd grown up. The old Baron Hart welcomed him coldly, standing in the doorway like a wall. She's not here. Do you know where she is? Even if I did, I wouldn't tell you. The Baron's eyes were hard. You threw my daughter out in a storm, destroyed her reputation, broke her heart. And now you want my help? I was wrong. Yes, you were. Please. Alistair had never begged in his life. The word felt foreign on his tongue. I know I don't deserve it, but if you know anything, if she's reached out at all, she hasn't. The Baron's expression softened just slightly, just enough for Alistair to see the worry beneath the anger. I haven't heard from her since she left London. Neither has her mother. Neither have her sisters. If you want to find her, Your Grace, you'll have to do better than this. The door closed in his face. Alistair stood there on the steps, rain starting to fall again, feeling the weight of what he'd done pressing down like a mountain. He got back on his horse and rode on. He spent weeks chasing ghosts, following rumors and half-leads and desperate hopes. Someone thought they'd seen her in Bath. Someone else swore she'd been spotted in Brighton. Every trail went cold. Every door closed. He learned things about Evelyn he'd never known. Friends she'd helped in secret. Charities she'd supported quietly. A whole life of kindness and generosity she'd never mentioned because she didn't need the recognition. He learned that everyone who'd known her, really known her, had loved her. And he learned that he'd been the only one blind enough to doubt her. The guilt ate at him, hollowed him out from the inside. He stopped sleeping properly, stopped eating much, became a man obsessed, chasing a woman who'd vanished like smoke. 3 months passed. 4. Winter crept in, cold and bitter. Alistair kept searching. He would find her. He had to, because the alternative, that he'd lost her forever, that she was gone and he'd never get the chance to make this right, was unthinkable. So he kept writing, kept asking, kept hoping. And somewhere out there, in a world that had moved on without him, Evelyn Hart was building a new life. A life he knew nothing about. A life she'd built without his name, without his money, without anything except her own strength and will. And when he finally found her, if he ever found her, he would learn exactly how much he'd cost her, and how little his apology would mean. The tavern in Newcastle smelled like stale beer and wet wool. Alistair sat in the corner farthest from the fire, nursing a whiskey he hadn't touched in an hour. Rain drummed against the windows, Always rain, it seemed, ever since that night, and the noise of the crowd washed over him like static. He'd been on the road for 4 months now. 4 months of cold beds and coaching inns, of conversations with strangers who knew nothing, of leads that went nowhere. His clothes were rumpled, his jaw unshaven. The Duke of Wren had become just another tired traveler chasing something he couldn't name. Except he could name it. Evelyn. A woman slid into the seat across from him, middle-aged, sharp-eyed, wearing a faded blue dress that had seen better days. She set down a mug of something dark and studied him with the kind of directness that made most men uncomfortable. "You're the one asking about the lady," she said. Alistair straightened. "You've seen her?" "Depends. What's she to you?" "My wife." The woman's eyebrows lifted. "That's so. Funny. Way I heard it, she's got no husband anymore." The words stung, but Alistair pushed past them. "Please, if you know where she is, I might not. What's it worth to you?" He pulled out a leather pouch, dropped it on the table. Coins clinked heavily. The woman opened it, counted quickly, then tucked it away in her skirts. "Pemberton," she said. "Little estate about 30 miles east of here. New owner took it over a few months back. Paid in cash, didn't ask for credit, kept to herself. Name she's using is Hartley. Evelyn Hartley." Alistair's heart kicked against his ribs. "You're certain?" "Saw her myself twice. Dark hair, fine features, talks like she's read more books than the vicar. That your lady?" "Yes." The word came out rough. He stood, nearly knocking over the chair. Thank you, I... Save it." The woman took a long drink. "Just don't go making trouble for her. She's been good to the people round here. Pays fair wages, doesn't put on airs. We like her." "I won't. I just need to see her." "That's what they all say." But Alistair was already halfway to the door. He rode through the night, pushing his horse harder than he should have, ignoring the exhaustion pulling at his bones. 30 miles. She was 30 miles away. After all this time, all these dead ends, she was real again, solid, findable. Dawn broke gray and cold as he crested a hill and saw it. A modest estate tucked into a valley, stone buildings clustered around a main house that looked more like a large cottage than a manor. Smoke curled from the chimneys. Sheep dotted the distant fields. It was nothing like the grand Wren estate, nothing like the life she'd left behind. It looked peaceful. Alistair rode up the lane slowly, his stomach twisting with something that felt like fear. What would he say? What words could possibly bridge the chasm he'd created? A man intercepted him before he reached the house, broad-shouldered, weathered, with the look of someone who'd worked the land his whole life. Estate manager, probably. "Help you?" The man's tone wasn't friendly. "I'm here to see Miss Hartley." "She expecting you?" "No." "Then you'll have to come back when she is." The man stepped into the path, arms crossed. Not threatening, exactly, but immovable. "It's urgent." "Everything's urgent with you London types. She's busy." "Please." Alistair dismounted, met the man's eyes. "Just tell her Alistair Wren is here. She'll know the name." The manager's expression darkened. "Oh, I know it too. You're the one threw her out, aren't you? Left her with nothing but the clothes on her back?" "Yes." No point denying it, no point making excuses. "And I need to see her, to apologize, to..." "She don't want your apology." "Did she say that?" "Didn't have to. Woman doesn't run halfway across England to start over if she wants to be found by the man who broke her." The manager jerked his thumb toward the road. "Best get moving, Your Grace, before I forget my manners. I'm not leaving until I see her." "Then you'll be waiting a long time." "That's fine." Alistair turned back to his horse, started untying his bag. "I'll wait right here." The manager stared at him like he'd lost his mind. Maybe he had. But Alistair had come too far, searched too long to turn back now because someone told him no. He made camp at the edge of the property, where the lane met the main road, set up a small tent, built a fire, settled in. The manager watched him for a while, then shook his head and walked back toward the house. Alistair waited. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, then began its descent. Workers came and went from the estate, farmhands, servants, a woman with a cart full of vegetables. None of them spoke to him, but he felt their eyes, felt their judgment. As evening fell, a figure appeared on the hill above the house. Too far to make out features, but Alistair knew. The way she stood, the tilt of her head, Evelyn. She was looking down at him. at the pathetic campsite he'd made on the edge of her new life. He stood, raised a hand, not waving, exactly, just acknowledging. She turned and walked back toward the house without a word. Alistair sat back down by his fire and told himself that was fine. He'd wait as long as it took. The estate manager returned at dusk with a lantern and a heavy scowl. She says you can have 5 minutes, in the morning, at the gate. Not a second longer, and if you try to push past that, I'll have you removed bodily. Understood? Yes. Thank you. Don't thank me. Thank her mercy, which is more than you deserve. The man left. Alistair stared into the fire, trying to figure out what he'd say in 5 minutes that could possibly matter. Every apology he crafted in his head sounded hollow. Every explanation fell flat. I was wrong, didn't cover it. I'm sorry was an insult. Please come back was laughable. He fell asleep not knowing what he'd say, and woke before dawn with his heart pounding and his hand shaking like a boy before his first duel. When the sun rose, he walked to the gate. Evelyn was already there. She stood on the other side of the iron bars, wrapped in a heavy wool cloak, her dark hair pulled back in a simple knot. She looked different, thinner, maybe, harder around the edges. But her eyes, those eyes he'd fallen in love with years ago, were clear and steady and completely, utterly unreadable. Alistair. Her voice was calm, neutral, like they were strangers making polite conversation at a garden party. Evelyn? His throat was tight. You look well. I am well. Good, that's good. Silence stretched between them. The bars of the gate felt symbolic, final. You have 5 minutes, she said, so say whatever you came to say. He'd rehearsed this 1,000 times in his head, had planned speeches, crafted arguments, imagined scenarios where he explained everything and she understood and somehow, impossibly, forgave him. All of it vanished. I'm sorry, he said. The words sounded as inadequate as he'd feared. I'm so sorry, Evelyn. I was wrong about everything. The letter was a lie, a fabrication. Thornhill set it up to discredit me politically, and I believed it. I didn't even question it. He stopped, swallowed. I destroyed us because I was too arrogant and too afraid to trust you. She said nothing. Her expression didn't change. I know who sent the letter now. I know about Martha, about the money, about the conspiracy. I know that you were protecting Lord Ashford's sister, that she'd come to you in confidence about an abusive husband, and you promised not to tell anyone, not even me, because her safety depended on secrecy. I know you were helping her escape, meeting with Ashford to coordinate, and that everything in that letter was twisted to make it look like an affair. Still nothing. I know all of that now, but it doesn't change what I did. It doesn't fix the fact that when you needed me to believe in you, I didn't. When you asked me to trust you, I chose suspicion instead. I threw you out into a storm, Evelyn. I treated you like you were nothing, and I will regret that for the rest of my life. A bird called somewhere in the distance. The wind rustled through bare branches. Are you finished? Evelyn asked. No, He reached into his coat, pulled out the small velvet pouch. Her wedding ring. He'd carried it every day since she left. I want you to have this back. I want you to come home. I want a chance to make this right. He held it out through the bars. She looked at it, at him. Something flickered across her face, pain, maybe, or memory, but it was gone too quickly to read. No, she said. The word landed like a stone. Evelyn, please eat. No. Her voice stayed calm, but there was steel underneath now. You rode all this way, camped outside my home, waited in the cold, and you think that earns you forgiveness? You think a pretty apology and a ring undo 4 months of rebuilding myself from nothing? I know it doesn't. You don't know anything. The first crack appeared in her composure. Her hands tightened on the folds of her cloak. You have no idea what it was like, walking out of that house with nowhere to go and nothing but the clothes I was wearing, sleeping in a coaching inn with my last few coins, wondering if anyone would even hire me without a reference, without a name I could use. I'm sorry. Stop saying that! Her voice rose, sharp enough to make him flinch. Stop acting like sorry fixes anything. You want to make it right? You can't. It's done. You made your choice that night, and I've made mine now. What choice? To move on. She gestured back toward the estate. I built this. Bought the land with money from selling my mother's jewelry, the only thing I had left. Hired people. Learned to manage accounts and negotiate contracts and make decisions without a man standing over my shoulder telling me what to think. I did that. Not you. Not your name or your title or your wealth. Me. I know, and I'm proud of you. I don't need you to be proud of me. The words came out raw, angry, real. I don't need your approval or your validation or your guilt-driven attempt at redemption. I needed you that night. I needed you to believe me, to stand by me, to give me even the smallest benefit of the doubt, and you didn't. So now you don't get to ride in here like some romantic hero and expect me to fall into your arms because you finally figured out the truth. Alistair felt something breaking inside his chest. I love you. You love the idea of me, the perfect duchess who never questioned you, never challenged you, never had a life outside of being your wife. But the real me, the woman who kept secrets to protect someone else, who valued honor over convenience, who had the strength to walk away. You didn't love her. You threw her away. That's not true, isn't it? She stepped closer to the gate, close enough that he could see the tears she was fighting back. Close enough that he could reach through and touch her if she'd let him. Tell me something, Alistair. If I came back, if I walked through this gate right now and said I forgive you, would you trust me the next time someone whispered doubt in your ear? Would you believe me if another letter arrived, another rumor spread? He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Because the answer was complicated. Because he wanted to say yes, of course, absolutely. But the truth was messier than that. The truth was that trust, once shattered, didn't just magically rebuild itself. That doubt, once planted, grew roots. That's what I thought, Evelyn said softly. I would try, he said desperately. I would work every day to be better, to be worthy of you. I don't want to be someone you have to work to trust. I don't want to spend the rest of my life proving myself to you, wondering when the next test will come, when the next doubt will creep in. She shook her head. I deserve better than that. You do. You deserve everything. Then let me have it, here, on my terms, in a life I chose for myself. Alistair stared at her through the bars, feeling the weight of what she was saying settle over him like a burial shroud. She wasn't coming back. This wasn't a negotiation or a reconciliation. This was an ending. The ring, he said, his voice breaking. Please, at least take it back. It's yours. No. She looked at the velvet pouch in his hand like it was something poisonous. That ring belonged to a woman who believed in fairy tales, who thought love and promises meant something. She's gone, and I don't want reminders of who I used to be. Evelyn, your 5 minutes are up. She turned away, started walking back up the path toward the house. Wait! Alistair gripped the bars of the gate hard enough to hurt. Please, just tell me what I can do. Tell me how to fix this. She stopped, didn't turn around. You can leave, she said. You can go back to London and your title and your life. You can let me be happy. That's all I want from you now, Alistair. Just let me go. Then she was walking again, her figure growing smaller as she climbed the hill. Alistair stood at the gate until she disappeared into the house. Stood there long enough for the sun to climb higher, for the morning chill to burn off, for the estate workers to start their day and cast curious glances his way. The manager appeared eventually. Time to leave, Your Grace. I can't. You heard the lady. She doesn't want you here. I heard her. Alistair finally stepped back from the gate, felt his hands ache from gripping the iron. But I can't just walk away, not like this. Don't see how you got much choice. There's always a choice. The manager studied him for a long moment. You planning to camp here again? Wait for her to change her mind? If that's what it takes. It won't work. She's stubborn. Made up her mind. You'll freeze out here before she softens. Then I'll freeze. A flicker of something crossed the manager's face. Respect, maybe, or pity. Hard to tell. You're a fool. Yes, I am. The man shook his head, turned to leave, then paused. Just so you know, there's talk in town about her. Speculation. Some folks wondering how a single woman bought an estate, whether she's got protection. If they see a duke camping on her doorstep, refusing to leave, it'll start rumors she doesn't need. Alistair's jaw tightened. The last thing he wanted was to damage her reputation further, To make her life here harder than he'd already made it. What would you suggest? He asked. Go back to London. Give her space. Let her live her life without you haunting the edges of it like some spurned ghost. And if I can't do that, then you're more selfish than I thought. The manager walked away, leaving Alistair alone at the gate, with the ring still clutched in his fist and the taste of ashes in his mouth. He stayed for 3 more days. Not camping at the gate, that would have been cruel, would have fed exactly the gossip the manager warned about. Instead, he took a room at a small inn in the nearby village, spent his days walking the countryside around Evelyn's estate, keeping his distance but unable to leave entirely. He watched her from afar, saw her walking the property with her manager, inspecting fences and discussing repairs. Saw her at the village market, selecting vegetables with the same careful attention she'd once given to menu planning for his dinner parties. Saw her laughing with a tenant farmer about something he couldn't hear. She looked content, not happy, exactly. There was a wariness to her now, a guardedness that hadn't been there before. But she was functioning, thriving even, building a life that worked, and he wasn't part of it. On the 4th morning, he made his decision. He rode back to the estate one last time, left the ring in a small wooden box at the gate with a note. This was always yours. If you ever change your mind, you know where to find me, shatter. Then he mounted his horse and turned toward London. The ride back felt longer than the search had been. Every mile dragged. He kept expecting to feel relief, or closure, or some kind of resolution. Instead, there was just emptiness, a hollow space where his purpose had been. He reached London on a Tuesday afternoon, the city gray and cold and indifferent to his return. Graves met him at the door, took one look at his face, and said nothing. Just helped him inside, ordered a bath drawn, had cook prepare a meal he wouldn't eat. Did you find her, sir? Graves asked finally. Yes. And? She doesn't want me. The old butler nodded slowly. I'm sorry. So am I. Alistair retreated to his study, the same room where he'd burned that damned letter, where he'd confronted Evelyn, where he'd started destroying everything that mattered. He stood at the window, looking out at grounds that felt empty now, at a life that felt pointless. A knock interrupted his brooding. Enter. A young clerk stepped in, nervous and out of place in the grand room. Your Grace, I'm sorry to disturb you, but there's been a development regarding Lord Thornhill. Alistair turned. What kind of development? He's been arrested, charged with fraud and conspiracy. Apparently the investigation into Lady Wren's case uncovered other schemes. Bribes, falsified documents, blackmail. It's all coming apart. Good. The word came out flat. Once he would have savored this. The man who destroyed his marriage getting his due, but now it just felt hollow. Justice didn't undo the damage. There's more, sir. He's asked to see you. Says he has information you'd want to hear. About Lady Wren. Alistair's blood went cold. What information? He wouldn't say, but he insists it's important. Says it changes things. When? He's being held at the magistrate's office. They'll allow a visit if you go today. Alistair was moving before the clerk finished speaking. The magistrate's office was a grim stone building that smelled like old paper and desperation. They led Alistair to a small room where Thornhill sat in chains, looking nothing like the polished politician who'd once commanded Parliament's attention. His clothes were rumpled, his face unshaven, his eyes bloodshot. Wren, Thornhill's voice was rough. Didn't think you'd come. I'm here for 5 minutes. Talk. Still arrogant as ever. Thornhill laughed, bitter. That's what made it so easy, you know. Your pride. Your certainty that you were right about everything. If you brought me here to gloat, I brought you here to tell you the truth. The whole truth this time. Thornhill leaned forward, chains clinking. That letter I sent about your wife? It wasn't the first one. Alistair went still. What? I sent 3 letters total. The first 2 never reached you. Your butler intercepted them. Graves, I think his name is. Smart man. Recognized the handwriting matched some other anonymous correspondence he'd seen, got suspicious, kept them from you. I only found out later when I sent the 3rd letter by a different courier. That's the one you got. Why are you telling me this? Because Graves knew. He knew someone was trying to plant doubt about your wife weeks before you ever saw that letter. And he never told you. The words hit like a punch. Graves, his most trusted servant, the man who'd served his family for over 4 decades, had been protecting him from Thornhill's schemes all along and never said a word. Why wouldn't he tell me? Alistair asked, more to himself than Thornhill. Maybe he thought you'd ignore the warning. Maybe he wanted to handle it quietly. Or maybe, Thornhill smiled, cruel, maybe he didn't trust you to believe in your wife even if you knew the letters were fake. Maybe he knew exactly what kind of man you really are. Alistair's hands clenched into fists. We're done here. One more thing, Wren. Thornhill's voice stopped him at the door. That woman you threw away? She came to see me. Before she left London. Walked right into my office and looked me dead in the eye. You're lying. Am I? Ask yourself this. How did your investigation find me so quickly? How did all those threads lead back to my name so neatly? Thornhill leaned back in his chair. She gave me up. Told your people exactly where to look. She could have just disappeared, started over, let you rot in ignorance. But she made sure you'd find the truth, made sure you'd know what you'd done. Now that's revenge. Alistair walked out without another word. His mind was racing. Evelyn had known, had figured out Thornhill's involvement and fed the information to Graves' investigators, had made sure Alistair learned the truth even though she had nothing to gain from it. Why? The answer came to him slowly, painfully. Because she was better than him. Because even after everything he'd done, she'd wanted him to know he'd been manipulated. Not for his sake, for the sake of truth itself. That was who she was. Who she'd always been, and he'd thrown her away. He returned to the estate, found Graves in the butler's pantry, reviewing household accounts. You intercepted letters, Alistair said without preamble. From Thornhill, before the one I received. Graves set down his pen slowly, met Alistair's eyes without flinching. Yes, sir. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was trying to protect you from making exactly the mistake you eventually made. The old man's voice was steady, sad. I thought if I kept the poison away from you, if I investigated quietly and found the source, I could end the threat before you ever knew it existed. I underestimated Thornhill's persistence, and I overestimated your faith in your wife. You should have told me. You're right, I should have, and I will carry that failure for the rest of my days. Graves stood, bowed slightly. If you wish to dismiss me, I'll understand. Alistair looked at this man who'd been part of his family longer than he'd been alive, who'd served with absolute loyalty, who'd tried to shield him from his own worst instincts, who'd failed only because the task was impossible. No, he said quietly, you stay. But no more secrets, Graves. No more protecting me from myself. If something like this ever happens again, it won't, sir. You can be certain of that. Because there was no marriage left to protect, no wife to shield from slander, nothing left to lose. Alistair returned to his study and sat in the chair where he'd made the worst decision of his life. Picked up the miniature portrait of Evelyn that sat on his desk, painted shortly after their wedding, her smile bright and real and full of hope for the future they'd build together. He'd destroyed that future, thoroughly, completely. And now he had to figure out how to live in the wreckage. The ring sat in his desk drawer, the one she'd refused to take back, the one that symbolized promises neither of them could keep anymore. He left it there and walked to the window, watching night fall over London, over a world that had moved on without them, and wondered if Evelyn was watching the same darkness settle over her hills. Wondered if she thought of him at all. Wondered if he'd ever stop feeling like he was drowning in regret. The answer, he suspected, was no. 6 months crawled by like years. Alistair threw himself into Parliament with a ferocity that bordered on obsession. He championed reforms he'd once ignored, burned political capital on causes that mattered to people who had no voice, worked 18-hour days until exhaustion was the only thing that let him sleep. His colleagues whispered that grief had changed him. They were half right. It wasn't grief, it was penance. Thornhill's trial had been swift and brutal. The man was sentenced to 10 years, his reputation obliterated, his assets seized. Alistair attended every day of the proceedings, watching the architect of his misery face justice. It should have felt satisfying. It felt empty. He'd won, and he'd lost everything that mattered. Spring came reluctantly to London, bringing pale sunshine and the kind of warmth that made people hopeful. Alistair felt none of it. He was reviewing agricultural subsidy proposals in his study when Graves appeared in the doorway, looking troubled. "Your Grace, you have a visitor." "I'm not receiving anyone today." "Sir, I think you should make an exception." Something in the old man's tone made Alistair look up. "Who is it?" "Lord Nathaniel Ashford." The name hit like cold water. Alistair set down his pen carefully. "Show him in." Ashford entered moments later, and Alistair barely recognized him. The polished politician was gone, replaced by a man who looked like he'd aged a decade in half a year. His clothes hung loose on a thinner frame. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. "Wren." Ashford's voice was hoarse. "Thank you for seeing me." "I wasn't sure I would." Alistair didn't offer him a seat, didn't offer anything. "You disappeared after Evelyn left. People wondered why." "I know what people thought. Let them think it." Ashford moved to the window, stared out at nothing. "I owed her that much. To let the rumors land on me instead of her." "Noble of you." "It wasn't noble, it was guilt." Ashford turned back. "She protected my sister, put her own marriage at risk to help Catherine escape a man who was slowly killing her. And when it all fell apart, when you—" He stopped, swallowed. "When you cast her out, I did nothing. I let her take the fall alone because I was too much of a coward to speak up. You could have come forward, explained what really happened, and destroy my sister's fresh start, expose her to scandal and speculation. Catherine was barely holding herself together. If her name had been dragged through society gossip, if her husband had tracked her down—" Ashford's hands clenched. "I chose my sister over your wife. I'd make the same choice again, but that doesn't mean I don't regret it." Alistair studied him, this man whose silence had cost Evelyn her home, her reputation, her place in society. He wanted to be angry, wanted to hate him, but the truth was more complicated than that. "Why are you here?" Alistair asked. "Because Catherine wants to meet you. She's been carrying this guilt for months, convinced she destroyed your marriage. I told her it wasn't her fault, but she won't listen. She needs to, I don't know, apologize or explain, or something that lets her move past this." "Where is she?" "Bath. Living under a new name, working as a governess. She's safe now, free. But she won't be whole until she faces what her rescue cost someone else." Alistair wanted to refuse. Wanted to tell Ashford to take his guilt-ridden sister and leave him alone. But something in the other man's desperation, in the raw honesty of his regret, stopped him. "Fine," he said. "I'll meet her." "Thank you." Ashford's shoulders sagged with relief. "And Wren? For what it's worth, Evelyn spoke highly of you, even after everything. She said you were a good man who made a terrible mistake. She never blamed you for believing the worst. She blamed herself for not being able to tell you the truth. The words were meant to comfort. They twisted like knives instead." "She had nothing to blame herself for," Alistair said quietly. "I know, but she did anyway. That's who she was. Was. Past tense. Like she was gone. Like she'd died instead of just rebuilding her life somewhere he couldn't reach." Ashford left after arranging the meeting for the following week. Alistair sat in the empty study, listening to the house settle around him, wondering what the hell he was doing. The journey to Bath took 2 days. Alistair arrived at a modest townhouse on the edge of the city, where Ashford met him at the door looking even more nervous than he had in London. "She's waiting in the parlor. Fair warning, she's fragile. Please don't—" "I'm not here to punish her, Ashford." "Right. Yes. Of course." Catherine Ashford was a slight woman in her late 20s, with fair hair and eyes that had seen too much. She stood when Alistair entered, clasping her hands so tightly her knuckles went white. "Your Grace." Her voice trembled. "I'm so grateful you came." "Miss Ashford?" He took the seat across from her, kept his posture open, non-threatening. "Your brother said you wanted to speak with me." "I did. I do. I just—" She took a shaky breath. "I need you to know what happened, all of it, because Lady Wren, Evelyn, she saved my life and I destroyed hers, and I can't live with that if I don't at least try to make you understand." "I'm listening." Catherine told her story haltingly, with pauses where she had to collect herself. She'd been married at 19 to a man who seemed charming in public and turned monstrous behind closed doors. 3 years of escalating violence, of isolation, of terror. When she finally gathered the courage to leave, her husband threatened to ruin her family if she tried. Threatened to have Nathaniel removed from Parliament, to spread lies that would destroy their name. "I had nowhere to go," Catherine said, tears streaming now. "No money, no friends I could trust. Nathaniel wanted to help, but he couldn't be seen doing it, not without confirming every rumor my husband would spread. Then he met Evelyn at some dinner party. They got to talking, and he saw kindness in her, discretion. So he asked. And she agreed, immediately, without hesitation. She met with me, helped me plan my escape, gave me money from her own accounts. She coordinated everything with Nathaniel, where I'd go, how I'd get there, what name I'd use. She risked everything to help a stranger." Catherine wiped at her face. "And I let her pay the price. When the rumors started, when that letter reached you, I should have spoken up, should have told the truth. But I was so scared my husband would find me, would drag me back, and I stayed silent. Let her take the blame." "Your safety was more important than my marriage," Alistair said, and meant it. "Evelyn knew that. It's why she kept your secret, even when it cost her everything." "But it shouldn't have cost her anything. You should have trusted her." The accusation hung in the air, sharp and true. "You're right," Alistair said quietly. "I should have, but I didn't, and now we both have to live with that." Catherine broke down completely then, sobbing into her hands. Ashford moved to comfort her, shooting Alistair a look that was equal parts apologetic and defensive. Alistair stood. "Miss Ashford, look at me." She raised her tear-stained face. "What happened to my marriage wasn't your fault. It was mine. I'm the one who chose suspicion over faith. I'm the one who cast her out without listening. You were a woman fighting for your life. You don't owe me an apology. You don't owe me anything." But Evelyn made her own choices, and she'd make them again knowing what it cost. That's who she is. He moved toward the door. "Use the life she helped give you. Make it count. That's the only thing she'd want from you." He left before either of them could respond. The ride back to London felt longer than it should have. Alistair's mind kept circling back to Catherine's words, to the image of Evelyn risking everything for a stranger, and he wondered, not for the first time, how he'd ever convinced himself she was capable of betrayal. He was nearly home when the messenger caught up with him. A young man on a lathered horse, shouting for the Duke of Wren, waving a sealed letter like a flag. Alistair pulled his carriage to a stop, took the envelope, broke the seal. The handwriting was Graves. "Your Grace, urgent matter requires your immediate attention. Miss Hartley's estate has been attacked. Details unclear, but situation grave. Suggest you ride north with all speed. Graves." The world tilted. Alistair barely remembered the next few hours. Abandoning the carriage, commandeering the messenger's horse, riding north like demons were chasing him. He pushed the animal too hard, knew it and didn't care, drove through the night with only one thought pounding in his skull. Evelyn. He reached her estate as dawn broke and his heart nearly stopped. Half the main house was burned. Blackened timbers jutted from collapsed walls like broken bones. Smoke still rose from the wreckage. People clustered in the yard. Estate workers, villagers, a doctor tending to the injured. Alistair dismounted before his horse fully stopped, grabbed the nearest person. "Where is she? Where's Miss Hartley?" The man, one of the farmhands, pointed toward a small cottage away from the ruins. "There, sir. But she's hurt bad." Alistair ran. He found her inside, lying on a narrow bed, her estate manager keeping vigil beside her. Burns covered her arms. Bandages wrapped her hands. Her face was pale as death, her breathing shallow. "What happened?" Alistair's voice came out strangled. The manager looked up, red-eyed and exhausted. Fire started near midnight, in the west wing. She was already awake, heard something, went to investigate. Found a man setting it deliberately, tried to stop him, got caught in the flames when the accelerant caught. Who was he? Dead. Got trapped when the ceiling came down. But we found papers on him, orders. The manager pulled a singed document from his pocket. "From Victor Thornhill." Alistair's blood turned to ice. "He's in prison. He has friends who aren't. One of them hired this bastard to finish what Thornhill started, destroy anyone connected to you. Your wife was the easiest target. Not his wife, not anymore. But still the woman Thornhill had decided to punish. Still the victim of a vendetta that had nothing to do with her and everything to do with Alistair's enemies. The doctor? Alistair asked. Says the next 24 hours will tell. Burns are bad, but not fatal if infection doesn't set in. Smoke damage to her lungs is the real worry. She breathed in too much before we got her out. Alistair moved to the bedside, sank into the chair there. Evelyn's face was turned away from him, toward the wall. Even unconscious, even broken, she was turned away from him. You should go, the manager said. She wouldn't want you here. I'm not leaving. Your Grace, I said I'm not leaving. The manager stared at him for a long moment, then shook his head. Stubborn, both of you. No wonder you burned each other down. He left Alistair alone with her. Hours passed. The doctor came and went, changing bandages, administering laudanum, offering grim updates. Infection was setting in despite their efforts. Fever was climbing. The odds were getting worse. Alistair sat there through all of it, watching her breathe, willing her to keep fighting. As night fell, she stirred. Her eyes opened slowly, unfocused, hazy with pain and drugs. They found his face, and for a moment confusion flickered there. Then recognition. Then something that looked like resignation. You, she whispered. Her voice was wrecked, raw from smoke. Me? Why are you here? Because you're hurt. Not your problem anymore. Each word seemed to cost her. I told you to let me go. I tried. I can't. She closed her eyes. Alistair, don't. Just rest. We can talk when you're stronger. No. She forced her eyes open again. Need to say this. While I can. Evelyn, please. I don't forgive you. The words came out flat. Final. I know that's what you want. What you came here hoping for, but I can't give it to you. What you did, it broke something in me, and I can't just fix it because you're sorry. The truth of it hit him like a fist. I know. Then why are you here? Because even if you never forgive me, even if you hate me for the rest of your life, I need you to live through this. I need you to survive. Why? Because I love you. The words came out broken, desperate. Because the world is better with you in it. Because you deserve to build the life you wanted, the one I tried to destroy. You deserve happiness, Evelyn, even if it's not with me. She studied his face for a long moment. Tears tracked down her temples, disappearing into her hair. I loved you too, she said finally. Once. So much it scared me. And you took that love and twisted it into something ugly, into doubt and pain and... She coughed, the sound rattling and wet. When she could breathe again, her voice was even weaker. I can't go back to that. I won't. I'm not asking you to. Then what are you asking? Nothing. I'm asking for nothing. He reached out slowly, carefully, and took her burned hand in his. She didn't pull away. I'm just asking you to fight, to stay alive. The rest doesn't matter. She was quiet for so long he thought she'd fallen back into unconsciousness. Then, I'm tired, Alistair. So tired of fighting, of rebuilding, of trying to prove I'm worth something to people who've already decided I'm not. You're worth everything. You always were. Then why didn't you see it when it mattered? The question had no good answer. He'd failed her. Completely. Irrevocably. No words could change that. I don't know, he said honestly. I was blind, arrogant, afraid of looking weak, and I let that fear matter more than you did. I'll regret that until the day I die. Good. Her eyes drifted shut again. At least we'll both carry scars. Her breathing evened out. Sleep or unconsciousness, he couldn't tell which. The doctor returned, checked her pulse, shook his head grimly. Fever's worse. I've done all I can, Your Grace. The rest is up to her. Alistair didn't leave the chair. He sat through the night, through the next day, through another night, watched her fever climb and break and climb again. Listened to her labored breathing, the moments where it stopped entirely and his heart stopped with it, waiting for the next breath that somehow, impossibly, came. Other people moved through the cottage, the manager bringing food he didn't eat, The doctor making his rounds, servants whispering prayers and looking at him like he was a ghost haunting the sickbed. Maybe he was. On the third day, her fever broke. She woke slowly, eyes clearer than they'd been, focus sharper. Found him still sitting there, unshaven and hollow-eyed and probably looking half dead himself. "You're still here," she said. Not a question, an observation. "Yes." "Why?" "Because I couldn't be anywhere else." She was quiet for a while, studying the ceiling. Then, "The house?" "Half gone, but the structure's salvageable. Your manager has people working on it already." "The livestock?" "Safe. Everyone got out." "The man who set the fire?" "Dead. Thornhill's doing, even from prison. I'm handling it." She nodded slightly, winced at the movement. "You should go back to London. Eventually." "Alistair." She turned her head to look at him. "I meant what I said. I can't forgive you. I can't go back. You being here, it doesn't change anything." "I know. Then why stay?" "Because someone needs to make sure you're all right, and I don't trust anyone else to do it. That's not your job anymore." "Maybe not, but I'm doing it anyway." She closed her eyes again, but there was something softer in her expression now. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, just exhaustion, acceptance that he wasn't leaving, even though she'd asked him to. "You're impossible," she murmured. "Yes." "Stubborn." "Yes." "A fool." "Absolutely." The ghost of a smile touched her lips. Just for a second. Then it was gone. But he'd seen it. Over the next week, she grew stronger, started sitting up, taking solid food, arguing with the doctor about bed rest. The burns were healing, slowly but steadily. The smoke damage to her lungs would take longer, but she was breathing easier each day. Alistair stayed. He helped where he could, coordinating repairs to the house, managing correspondence with her solicitor, handling the investigation into Thornhill's network of conspirators. He slept in the cottage's second room, took meals with the estate workers, made himself useful in a way he'd never had to before. And slowly, carefully, he and Evelyn found a rhythm. Not the rhythm they'd had as husband and wife. This was different. Wary, tentative, like two people learning to exist in the same space without destroying each other. She asked him about London, about Parliament, about the trial and Thornhill's sentencing. He told her everything, leaving nothing out, including his own failings and mistakes. She told him about the estate, about the people she'd hired, the systems she'd built, the quiet satisfaction of creating something with her own hands instead of just managing what someone else had made. They didn't talk about the past, about the night he'd cast her out, about the ring she'd refused, about the love that had burned down between them. Those wounds were too fresh, too raw. But they talked, and that was something. 10 days after the fire, she was well enough to walk outside. Alistair helped her navigate the uneven ground, his arms steady under hers, and they stood looking at the ruins of her house. "I'm going to rebuild it," she said, "bigger than before. Better." "You will. Without your money. Without anyone's help." "I know." She glanced at him. "You could offer, try to buy your way back into my life." "I could, but I won't." "Why not?" "Because you don't need my money. You never did. You just needed me to believe in you." He looked at the blackened timbers, the construction already beginning. "And I failed. So now the only thing I can do is stay out of your way and let you prove what I should have known all along, that you're stronger than I ever gave you credit for." She was quiet for a long time. Then, "I'm scared," she admitted, "of what happens next, of whether I can actually do this, of whether I'm just fooling myself into thinking I'm strong enough." "You are." "How do you know?" "Because you survived me." He turned to face her fully. "Because you walked out into a storm with nothing and built a life anyway. Because you saved a stranger and kept her secret even when it destroyed you. Because you're standing here now, looking at ruins and planning how to make them into something beautiful." Tears shimmered in her eyes. She blinked them back. "That doesn't mean I forgive you." "I know. Or that I want you back." "I know that too." "Then what do you want, Alistair? Why are you really still here?" He'd asked himself that question 100 times. The answer was complicated, messy, painful. I want to see you rebuild, he said finally. I want to know you're safe and happy and thriving. I want to watch you create the life you deserve, even if I'm not part of it. And when I'm sure, absolutely certain, that you're all right without me, then I'll go. But not before. She stared at him, searching his face for deception or hidden motives, finding none, apparently, because she finally nodded. All right. All right. You can stay. Until I'm rebuilt. Until I'm stable. Then you leave, and we go back to being strangers who used to know each other. It wasn't what he wanted. It would never be what he wanted. But it was more than he deserved. Thank you, he said. They walked back toward the cottage in silence, and Alistair felt something shift. Not hope. He'd lost the right to that. But purpose. Maybe. A reason to keep breathing that wasn't just guilt and regret. He would help her rebuild. Would make sure she had everything she needed. And when she was strong enough, established enough, safe enough, he would do what she'd asked from the beginning. He would let her go. That night, as he lay in the narrow bed in the cottage's second room, he heard her coughing in the next room. Heard her get up, move around, trying to quiet the spasms that still racked her damaged lungs. He got up too. Found her in the small kitchen, hunched over the table, gasping. Here! He poured water, brought it to her, rubbed her back while she drank and tried to breathe. Easy, just breathe. I'm fine, she wheezed. You're not, but you will be. She looked up at him, eyes streaming from the coughing, and for just a moment the walls she'd built came down. For just a second, she looked at him the way she used to, with trust and vulnerability and something that might have been longing. Then she caught herself, pulled back, reinforced the barriers. Go back to bed, Alistair. Will you be all right? I always am. He wanted to argue, wanted to stay, to make sure the coughing didn't start again, that she didn't need him. But she'd asked him to go, so he went. Lay awake in the dark, listening to the sounds of her moving through the cottage, and wondered if there would ever be a time when her asking him to leave didn't feel like dying. The answer, he knew, was no. But he'd learned to live with that particular kind of pain. Had learned that loving someone sometimes meant watching them walk away and not following. He just hoped he'd have the strength to do it when the time came. Because the time was coming. The house was being rebuilt. Her life was stabilizing. Soon, too soon, she wouldn't need him here anymore. And then he'd have to keep his promise. He'd have to leave. And this time, when she closed the door behind him, it would stay closed forever. And this time, when she closed the door behind him, it would stay closed forever. The thought haunted him through the dawn. Alistair gave up on sleep around 5, dressed quietly, and slipped outside before anyone else stirred. The estate was taking shape again, new timber framing the skeleton of what would become the rebuilt house, workers' tools lined up ready for the day's labor. In 6 weeks, maybe 8, it would be finished. And then his purpose here would end. He was walking the perimeter when he heard the horse approaching fast. A rider came thundering up the lane, mud flying from the animal's hooves. Alistair recognized one of Graves' men, Thomas, the young footman he'd sent back to London weeks ago with instructions to keep watch on Thornhill's associates. The man nearly fell off his horse in his haste to dismount. Your Grace, thank heaven, I've been riding all night. Slow down, what's happened? Thomas gulped air, thrust a sealed letter at him. From Graves, sir. Says it's urgent you see this immediately. Alistair broke the seal, scanned the contents, and felt ice flood his veins. Your Grace, evidence has surfaced regarding additional conspirators in Thornhill's network. Most concerning Lord Edmund Pascoe, who sits on the magistrate's board overseeing Thornhill's imprisonment, has been receiving payments from an account linked to Thornhill's wife. We believe Pascoe is coordinating efforts to secure Thornhill's early release through legal manipulations. More troubling, intercepted correspondence suggests another attack planned against Miss Hartley's property. Date uncertain but imminent. Recommend immediate security measures. Also, parliamentary motion scheduled for vote next week would strip protections from unmarried women's property rights. If passed, Miss Hartley's estate could be vulnerable to seizure by creditors or claimants. Motion is Pascoe's doing. This is targeted legislation. Graves. Alistair read it twice, fury building with each word. Thornhill was still pulling strings from prison, still trying to destroy Evelyn, and now he'd found a way to do it legally. If that motion passed, Any man with a fabricated debt or forged claim could take her land. Everything she'd built would be ripped away. "When did this arrive?" he asked Thomas. "Graves sent me yesterday morning. I rode straight through." "Get yourself food and rest. I need to think." But thinking wasn't going to solve this. Action would. Alistair found Evelyn's estate manager already awake, overseeing the morning work assignments. He pulled the man aside, showed him Graves' letter. "Double the watch," Alistair said. "Armed men at night. No strangers on the property without thorough vetting. And get word to the local magistrate. I want constables aware there may be another attempt." The manager's jaw tightened. "We're not letting them burn her out again." "No, we're not." He found Evelyn at the cottage, dressed and attempting to make tea with her bandaged hands. She looked up when he entered, read his expression immediately. "What's wrong?" He told her everything, watched her face go pale, then set into hard lines. "So Thornhill's still coming for me, even from prison." "He's coming for both of us, but you're the easier target. And this parliamentary motion, if it passes, I could lose everything?" "Potentially, yes." She set down the teapot with shaking hands. "I can't fight the entire legal system, Alistair. I don't have the resources, the connections. But I do." She looked at him sharply. "What are you planning?" "I'm going back to London. I'm going to kill that motion before it reaches a vote, and I'm going to make sure Thornhill never breathes free air again." "You can't just—" "I can, and I will." He moved closer, caught her eyes. "But I need you to do something for me." "What?" "Stay safe. Don't take risks. Let your people handle security. If anything feels wrong, you send word immediately. Promise me." "Alistair, promise me, Evelyn." She studied his face, and whatever she saw there made her nod slowly. "I promise. But you need to promise me something too." "Anything." "Don't do anything stupid. Don't throw away your position or your reputation trying to protect me. I won't be the reason you destroy yourself. You're not destroying me. You're the only thing keeping me from destroying myself." The words hung between them. Evelyn's throat worked. She looked away. "Just be careful," she said quietly. "Always." He left within the hour. The ride to London felt faster than the journey north had been, driven by purpose instead of desperation. He arrived after dark, went straight to his estate, found Graves waiting with a stack of documents and a grim expression. "Welcome back, sir. Bring me everything you have on Pasco, every connection, every financial record, every piece of leverage we can find." "Already assembled," Graves gestured to the papers. "He's deep in debt from gambling. His wife left him last year. His son is involved in a scandal involving a married woman. The man's desperate, which is why Thornhill could buy him so easily." "Good. Desperate men make mistakes." Alistair scanned the documents, mind already working. "What's the timeline on the parliamentary motion?" "Vote scheduled for 6 days from now. Pasco has enough support to pass it if we don't intervene." "Then we intervene." Over the next 72 hours, Alistair became a man possessed. He called in every favor he'd earned in 15 years of political service. Met with allies, pressured fence-sitters, made quiet threats to men who owed him. The motion to strip property protections wasn't about legal reform. It was targeted revenge dressed up as legislation. Once people understood that, once they saw how it could be weaponized against their own daughters and sisters, the support began crumbling. But Pasco fought back hard, called Alistair obsessed, claimed he was using his position to protect a woman of questionable reputation, insinuated that perhaps the Duke of Wren had reasons to defend Miss Hartley beyond altruism. The rumors spread fast. Alistair ignored them. Let people whisper, let them speculate. The only thing that mattered was stopping that vote. 3 days before the scheduled vote, he received an unexpected visitor. Lord Nathaniel Ashford appeared at his study door, looking nervous but determined. "Wren, I heard what you're doing about the motion." "What about it?" "I want to help." Ashford stepped inside. "My sister's situation, what Evelyn did for her, it's relevant. If Parliament knew that women need property protection specifically because of situations like Catherine's, if they understood how this motion would trap women in abusive marriages," Alistair considered him, "you'd have to go public, expose your sister's history, the scandal." "Catherine says she's willing, says she's tired of hiding while good people suffer for helping her." Ashford met his eyes. We owe Evelyn this, both of us. It won't be easy. The questions, the scrutiny, I know, but it's right, and I'm tired of being a coward. They worked together through the night, crafting testimony that laid bare Catherine's abuse, her escape, Evelyn's role in saving her. It was damning stuff, personal, the kind of truth that made comfortable men uncomfortable. Ashford delivered it himself at a closed parliamentary session 2 days before the vote. The room went silent as he spoke. By the time he finished, 3 men who'd supported Pascoe's motion had switched sides. But it still wasn't enough. Alistair needed something bigger, something that would blow the whole conspiracy wide open and expose Pascoe for what he was. He found it in the financial records. Graves had traced the payments to Pascoe back through a web of shell accounts and intermediaries, but buried in the transactions was a pattern, regular deposits that coincided with specific legal decisions Pascoe had made in his role as magistrate. Not just Thornhill's case, others. A dozen cases over 3 years where Pascoe had ruled in favor of defendants who'd paid him off. It was bribery, systematic corruption, and it was documented in black and white. Alistair took the evidence to the Lord Chancellor himself. The old man read through the documents with growing horror, his face reddening with each page. Pascoe has been on my board for 5 years, and he's been corrupt the entire time. These records prove it. If this becomes public, it needs to become public, today, before that vote happens. The Lord Chancellor looked at him sharply. You understand what you're asking? Pascoe has allies. Exposing him will make you enemies. I already have enemies. What I need is justice. For Miss Hartley. For everyone he's wronged. She's just the most recent victim. The old man studied him for a long moment. You've changed, Wren. 6 months ago, you wouldn't have risked political capital on something like this. 6 months ago, I was a different man. A worse one? Definitely. The Chancellor allowed himself a small smile. Very well. I'll convene an emergency inquiry. Pascoe will be suspended pending investigation, and his motion will die in committee. Satisfied? It's a start. The news broke that afternoon. By evening, Pascoe was arrested. By the next morning, Thornhill's hopes of early release had evaporated, and the motion to strip women's property rights was officially withdrawn. Alistair stood in Parliament's corridor, watching men who'd supported Pascoe scramble to distance themselves from the scandal, and allowed himself one moment of satisfaction. He'd won. Not the war. Thornhill still had resources, still had people willing to do his bidding, but this battle. Evelyn's estate was safe, her property secure. For now. He was gathering his things to return north when a page found him. Your Grace, there's a woman here to see you. Says it's urgent. I'm not receiving... She says her name is Evelyn Hartley. His heart stopped. She was supposed to be safe at the estate. Protected. What was she doing in London? He found her in one of the smaller receiving rooms, pacing like a caged animal. She was dressed in traveling clothes, her hair windblown, exhaustion written in every line of her body. But her eyes were bright, angry. What are you doing here? Alistair demanded. You promised to stay safe. I lied. She rounded on him. Did you really think I'd sit at home while you fought my battles for me? While you risked everything, your reputation, your position, to protect my estate? That's exactly what I thought you'd do, yes. Then you don't know me at all. Evelyn, I read about Pascoe's arrest, about the evidence you uncovered, about Ashford's testimony. She closed the distance between them. You didn't have to do any of that. You could have let the motion pass, let Thornhill win, saved yourself the political cost. Why didn't you? You know why. Say it. He met her eyes, saw the challenge there, the demand for honesty. Because I love you, he said. Because watching you lose everything again would have killed me. Because I'd burn down all of Parliament if it meant keeping you safe. That's insane. Probably. You're supposed to be letting me go. Building your own life, moving on. I'm trying. I'm failing spectacularly, but I'm trying. Something shifted in her expression. The anger didn't disappear, but something else rose alongside it, something that looked almost like pain. I came to London to tell you to stop, she said. To tell you that I don't need you fighting for me, that I can handle my own problems, that you're making this harder by staying in my life. All right. The word felt like swallowing glass. I'll stop. But then I walked past Parliament and I saw people talking about the inquiry. I heard them discussing the case, discussing me. And do you know what they said? He shook his head. They said that Duke Wren must truly love his wife to risk so much for her honor. They said that a man who'd go to such lengths to protect a woman's reputation must regret losing her very deeply. Her voice cracked. And I realized they still think I'm your wife, that we're still something. And instead of being angry about it, I just felt sad. Evelyn, I miss you. The admission came out raw, broken. I hate that I miss you. I hate that even after everything, even after I've rebuilt my life and convinced myself I'm better off alone, I still wake up reaching for someone who isn't there. I still hear your voice in my head when I make decisions. She stopped, pressed her hands to her face. I still love you, and I hate it. I hate that you can destroy me, and I still love you anyway. Alistair couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only stare at this woman who'd traveled 2 days to yell at him and ended up confessing what he'd stopped hoping he'd ever hear. You don't have to love me, he said carefully. You shouldn't love me. I don't deserve— Of course you don't deserve it. She dropped her hands, glared at him through tears. You threw me away. You broke my heart and my trust and everything I thought we had. You have no right to my love, Alistair Wren. None. I know. But you have it anyway. Because I'm apparently an idiot who can't stop caring about a man who didn't care enough to believe in her when it mattered. That's not— I did care. I cared so much that the thought of you betraying me nearly killed me. And I was so terrified of that pain that I chose to believe the worst instead of fighting for the truth. I was a coward, Evelyn, and I've regretted it every second since. She wiped at her eyes angrily. Pretty words don't fix anything. I know. And I can't just take you back. I can't pretend the last 6 months didn't happen. I know that too. Then what are we doing? Her voice rose. Why are you here? Why am I here? What's the point of all this if we can't go back and we can't move forward? Alistair took a step toward her, then another, slowly, giving her time to retreat if she wanted. She didn't move. He reached out, cupped her face in his hands, felt her tremble under his touch. Maybe we don't go back, he said quietly. Maybe we don't try to resurrect what we had. Maybe we start over. Build something new, something better, something based on who we actually are instead of who we thought we were supposed to be. That's not how it works. Why not? We're not the same people we were 6 months ago. I'm not the arrogant fool who threw you out. You're not the woman who kept silent to protect someone else's secrets. We've both changed, grown. Maybe that means we get a second chance. Second chances are for people in fairy tales. Maybe. Or maybe they're for people stubborn enough to fight for them. She laughed, a bitter, broken sound. You're delusional. Probably, but I'm right too. How do you know? Because you're here. Because you came all the way to London to yell at me instead of just sending a letter telling me to stop. Because you still love me even though you hate it. That's not nothing, Evelyn. That's everything. She closed her eyes, leaned into his touch just slightly, just enough for him to feel it. I don't trust you, she whispered. I know. I don't know if I ever will again. That's fair. And I won't come back to your estate. I won't be your duchess again. I won't give up everything I built. I wouldn't ask you to. Her eyes opened. Then what are you asking? For time. For patience. For a chance to prove I'm worth the risk. He brushed his thumb across her cheekbone, catching a tear. Let me court you properly. Let me earn back what I lost. And if you decide I'm not worth it, if you decide the damage is too deep, I'll accept that. But give me the chance to try. That's insane. You said that already. Because it is. You can't just court me like we're strangers at a dance. Why not? Because we're married. Technically, but that marriage died the night I cast you out. We both know it. So let's bury it properly and see if we can build something new in its place. She stared at him like he'd lost his mind. Maybe he had. But the alternative, walking away, letting her go, spending the rest of his life wondering what might have been if he'd just fought harder, was unthinkable. I need time to think, she said finally. Take all the time you need. And I'm going back to the estate, alone. You stay in London, deal with the aftermath of the Pascoe situation, do your job. All right, And no grand gestures, no flowers, no letters, no dramatic declarations. If I decide to give you a chance, it'll be because I choose to, not because you overwhelmed me into submission. Understood. She pulled away from his hands, and he let her go. Watched her gather herself, rebuild the walls she'd let slip for just a moment. This doesn't mean I forgive you, she said. I know. Or that I'm promising anything. I know that too, but... She hesitated at the door, looked back at him. But I'll think about it. It was the smallest opening, the faintest glimmer of hope. It was enough. She left without another word. Alistair stood in the empty receiving room, his heart pounding, his mind racing. She still loved him. She'd said it, out loud, even though it hurt her, even though she hated it. That had to mean something. He returned to his work with renewed energy. Spent the next week cementing the case against Pascoe, making sure Thornhill's network of conspirators was fully exposed and dismantled. 3 more men were arrested. 2 fled the country. The scandal rocked Parliament, forced reforms, changed policies. And through it all, Alistair kept his promise. No letters to Evelyn. No flowers. No contact at all except for one brief note confirming that the legal threats to her property were permanently resolved. She didn't write back. 2 weeks passed. Then 3. He started to think he'd imagined that moment in the receiving room. Started to convince himself she'd gone back to the estate and decided the risk wasn't worth it. That forgiveness was impossible. That he'd lost his chance. Then a letter arrived. Simple. Direct. In her handwriting. The house is finished. I'm hosting a small gathering to celebrate. Tenants, workers, local families who helped during the fire. If you'd like to attend, you may. Not as my husband, not as the Duke of Wren. As Alistair. Just Alistair. I'm not promising anything beyond a single evening, but if you want to try earning back what you lost, this is where it starts. Alistair read the letter 3 times. Then he called for his horse. He rode north through rain and cold, pushed hard, arrived at the estate as the sun set on the day of the gathering. The rebuilt house was beautiful, sturdy stone and strong timber, larger than before, with wide windows that let in light and a solid roof that would withstand any storm. She'd built this, created it from ashes and will and sheer stubborn determination. The gathering was already underway. Lanterns lit the yard. Music drifted from open windows. People laughed and talked and celebrated. Alistair dismounted at the edge of the property, suddenly uncertain. He didn't belong here. These weren't his people. This wasn't his life. But Evelyn had invited him anyway. He walked toward the house slowly, caught sight of her through one of the windows, wearing a simple blue dress, hair down, smiling at something an older woman was saying. She looked happy. Whole, complete. She looked like someone who didn't need him. Maybe that was the point. He was about to turn back to leave before anyone saw him when her eyes found him through the window. She stopped mid-conversation, stared at him standing alone in the yard. Then she excused herself and walked to the door. She stepped outside, crossed the space between them, stopped just out of reach. "You came," she said. "You invited me. I wasn't sure you would. I'll always come if you ask." They stood there in the lamplight, music and laughter floating around them, the space between them charged with everything unsaid. "Thank you," she said finally, "for what you did in London, for stopping Pascoe, for protecting the estate. You don't have to thank me." "Yes, I do, because you could have walked away. You could have let Thornhill win. But you didn't. You fought for me even when I told you not to." She took a breath. "That means something. Does it mean I get a second chance?" "It means..." She paused, looked up at the house she'd built, back at him. "It means I'm willing to see if there's something worth saving. Not what we had. That's gone. But maybe something new, something better. I'll take it. There are conditions. Name them. You don't push. You don't rush. You let me set the pace, and you respect my boundaries. If I say stop, you stop. If I say I need space, you give it. No exceptions." "Agreed. And we do this honestly. No secrets, no half-truths. If something's bothering you, you say it. If you're scared or angry or uncertain, you tell me. We don't let things fester until they explode." "I can do that. Can you?" She moved closer, close enough to touch if he reached out. Because that's what destroyed us the first time. You didn't talk to me, didn't ask questions, just assumed the worst and acted on it. I know. He met her eyes. And I swear to you, Evelyn, on everything I have, everything I am, I will never make that mistake again. If doubt creeps in, I'll bring it to you. If fear tries to make me cruel, I'll fight it. I'll be better. Not perfect, but better. Better is all I'm asking for. She held out her hand. He looked at it, at this offer she was making, this fragile, tentative, terrifying olive branch. Then he took it. Her fingers curled around his, warm, real, solid. Come inside, she said. Meet my people. See what I built. I'd like that. She led him toward the house, toward the music and light, and the life she'd created. And for the first time in 6 months, Alistair felt something other than grief and regret. He felt hope. It was small, fragile, easily broken. But it was there. And maybe, just maybe, it would be enough. And maybe, just maybe, it would be enough. The gathering inside was warm and loud in the way celebration should be. Evelyn introduced him simply. This is Alistair, and no one seemed to know or care about titles. They saw a man who'd shown up in work clothes, who shook hands with farmers, and listened to an old woman's story about losing her own home to fire 30 years ago. He stayed at the edges mostly, watched Evelyn move through her people with easy confidence, laughing at jokes, settling a dispute between 2 children over the last piece of cake, accepting thanks from the workers who'd rebuilt her house. This was her world now, one she'd made without him. An hour in, she found him near the fireplace. You're being quiet. Just watching. What do you see? Someone who doesn't need rescuing. He looked at her. Someone who never did. She tilted her head. That bother you? No, it humbles me. Before she could respond, her estate manager approached with a concerned expression. Miss Hartley, sorry to interrupt. There's someone at the gate asking for you. Says it's urgent. Who? Wouldn't give a name, but he's got the look of London about him. Alistair's instincts prickled. I'll come with you. They walked to the gate together, the manager following at a discreet distance. A man waited there, middle-aged, expensive clothes, the kind of calculated neutrality that screamed lawyer. Miss Hartley, the man bowed slightly. My name is Jonathan Merrick. I represent the estate of the late Baron Edmund Hartwell. Evelyn went still. That's my grandfather's name, but he died when I was a child. Indeed. And his estate has been in litigation for 15 years over a disputed will. That litigation was recently resolved. Merrick pulled out a document case. Your grandfather left a substantial inheritance to be divided among his grandchildren upon resolution of the legal matters. As you are his eldest granddaughter, you're entitled to a considerable sum. How considerable? £12,000 to be precise, plus dividend shares in 2 shipping companies and a small property in Kent. The number hung in the air. £12,000, more than enough to expand the estate, to weather any future crisis, to secure Evelyn's independence permanently. There must be a mistake, Evelyn said. My father never mentioned. Your father wasn't aware. The will was contested before he could be notified, and by the time the legal issues were resolved, well, Merrick gestured vaguely. Families lose touch, lawyers retire, papers get misfiled. I only discovered your existence when conducting a final audit of the estate's beneficiaries. Why now, after all this time? Because I'm thorough, Miss Hartley, and because you deserve what's rightfully yours. Evelyn took the documents with shaking hands, scanned them. Her eyes widened. This is real. Quite real. The funds can be transferred to your accounts within a fortnight once you've signed the necessary papers. After Merrick left, with promises to send the full documentation and a very proper bow, Evelyn just stood there staring at the papers. £12,000, she whispered. You could do a lot with that, Alistair said carefully. I could expand, hire more workers, buy the adjacent property I've had my eye on, build a proper school for the tenant children. She looked up at him. I could be completely independent. Never worry about money again. Yes. I wouldn't need anyone's help, not my family's, not yours, not anyone's. I know. She studied his face. You don't look threatened by that. Why would I be? This is what you deserve, what you've always deserved. Most men would hate it. A woman with her own money, her own power. I'm not most men, and I've learned the hard way that trying to control you is like trying to hold smoke. He smiled slightly. You're better when you're free. Something shifted in her expression, softened. You really mean that? Every word. She folded the papers carefully. Come on. We should get back before people wonder where we've gone. They walked back to the house in comfortable silence. But as they reached the door, she caught his arm. Alistair, what you did in London, stopping Pascoe, protecting my estate, I know it cost you politically. I know you made enemies. Worth it. Is it? Really? Because you gave up a lot for me, for someone who wasn't even yours anymore. You've always been mine. I was just too stupid to realize that ownership isn't about control. It's about... He stopped, struggled to find the right words. It's about wanting someone to be happy, even if their happiness doesn't include you. That's not ownership, that's love. Maybe they're the same thing, when it's real. She looked at him for a long moment. Then slowly, she raised up on her toes and pressed a kiss to his cheek. Brief, chaste, but deliberate. Thank you, she said, for everything. Then she was gone, back into the warmth and noise of the celebration, leaving him standing on the threshold with his heart pounding and hope spreading through his chest like spring after a brutal winter. The weeks that followed established a pattern. Alistair divided his time between London and the estate, handling parliamentary business while finding excuses to ride north every few days. He brought her no gifts, per her rules, but he brought himself. Helped with repairs. Listened to her plans. Asked questions about the estate management and actually cared about the answers. They talked. About everything. About his childhood, his failures, his fears, about her dreams, her doubts, the loneliness of rebuilding alone. They argued sometimes. Sharp debates about politics or philosophy that left them both energized rather than angry. They laughed occasionally at shared memories that hurt less now than they had months ago. And slowly, carefully, they rebuilt something that looked almost like trust. 2 months after the celebration, Alistair received an urgent summons from the Lord Chancellor. He made the ride to London wondering what crisis had erupted now. He found the Chancellor in his private office, looking grave. Wren, thank you for coming. What's happened? Thornhill, the old man gestured to a chair. He's dead, murdered in his cell 3 days ago, killed by another prisoner, a man with connections to one of the families Thornhill destroyed with his schemes. Alistair sat down slowly. So it's over. The immediate threat, yes, but there's more. We've been going through his papers, his correspondence. Wren, the conspiracy was bigger than we thought. He had people in the Treasury, the magistrate's office, even the palace. How many? 14 we've identified so far. All of them involved in schemes to manipulate policy, destroy enemies, enrich themselves. It's staggering. What do you need from me? Your testimony, your evidence. You uncovered most of this. You and your staff. Parliament's convening a special inquiry, and we need you to walk us through everything you found. When? 2 weeks. Can you be ready? Alistair thought of Evelyn, of the fragile peace they were building. Thought about dragging all of this back into the light, reliving the worst moments, exposing himself to questions and scrutiny. Then he thought about all the other people Thornhill had hurt, all the lives destroyed, all the wrongs that needed righting. I'll be ready. He rode north that night to tell Evelyn in person, found her in the estate office reviewing accounts by lamplight. She looked up when he entered, smiled. You're early. Wasn't expecting you until tomorrow. I have news. About Thornhill. The smile faded. What kind of news? He told her everything, watched her process it, saw the emotions flicker across her face. Relief, anger, something that might have been grief for the man who'd once seemed honorable before revealing his rot. So you'll have to testify, she said when he finished. Yes. They'll ask about me, about our marriage, about everything that happened. Probably. And you'll have to answer. I'll tell the truth. What he did. What I did. All of it. She stood, paced to the window. This will put you back in the spotlight. Make you vulnerable to your enemies. I know. You could refuse, let someone else take the lead. I could, but I won't. She turned to face him. Why not? You've done enough. You stopped the motion, exposed Pasco, protected my estate. You don't owe anyone more than that. It's not about owing, it's about doing what's right. He moved closer. Thornhill destroyed lives, Evelyn. Yours, mine, dozens of others. If I can help make sure his entire network gets dismantled, if I can prevent this from happening to someone else, then that's what I have to do. Even if it costs you? Even then. She searched his face. You really have changed. Had a good teacher. Who? You. Watching you rebuild from nothing. Watching you choose integrity over convenience. Watching you be brave when it would have been easier to hide. He caught her hand. You made me want to be better, so I'm trying. Her fingers tightened around his. The inquiry will be brutal. They'll tear apart everything, every mistake, every failure. I know. And when they ask about our marriage, about that night, what will you say? The truth. That I destroyed the best thing in my life because I was too afraid and too proud to trust you. That I failed you in every way that mattered. That I've spent every day since trying to become someone worthy of a second chance. Tears welled in her eyes. Alistair, I love you, Evelyn. I've never stopped loving you. And if standing in front of Parliament and admitting my failures is what it takes to help put this right, then that's easy. Because you taught me that some things are worth fighting for, even when the fight makes you vulnerable. She kissed him, not the chaste kiss from weeks ago. This was full and desperate and real, her hands fisting in his shirt, his arms wrapping around her, both of them holding on like they might drown if they let go. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, she rested her forehead against his. I'm terrified, she whispered. Of what? Of letting you back in. Of trusting you. Of what happens if you fail me again. I'm terrified too, of not being enough. Of making another mistake. Of losing you permanently this time. He pulled back enough to meet her eyes. But I'd rather be terrified with you than safe without you. That's the most romantic and stupid thing I've ever heard. I'm good at those. She laughed, watery and broken and beautiful. We're really doing this? Trying again? If you'll have me. Not as we were. We can't go back to that. I don't want to go back. I want to go forward. Build something new, something honest. It won't be easy. Nothing worth having ever is. She kissed him again, softer this time, slower. When she pulled back, there was something settled in her expression. A decision made. Okay, she said. We try. But Alistair, if you ever doubt me again, if you let fear make you cruel, we're done. Permanently. No third chances. Understood? Understood. And I keep the estate. My name. My independence. I'm not going back to being just the Duchess of Wren. I wouldn't ask you to. You're Evelyn Hartley. That's enough. Good. She stepped back, straightened her dress, tried to compose herself. Failed completely. Now get out of here before I do something really stupid, like ask you to stay the night. Would that be so stupid? Yes. Because we're doing this properly. Slowly. Building trust before we build anything else. You're cruel. I'm practical, and you'll thank me later. He left because she asked him to, but the ride back to London felt different this time. Lighter. Like something heavy he'd been carrying had finally lifted. The inquiry began 2 weeks later. Parliament's Grand Chamber was packed. Lords and Commons both. Journalists scribbling notes, spectators craning for a better view. Alistair sat at the witness table, Graves beside him with boxes of evidence, and laid it all out. Every payment, every forged document, every life Thornhill had destroyed in his quest for power. The questioning was brutal. 3 days of relentless interrogation, of hostile lords trying to poke holes in his evidence, of sympathizers to Thornhill's cause attempting to discredit him. On the second day, they asked about his marriage. Duke Wren, is it true that you cast out your wife based on a letter that later proved to be fraudulent? The chamber went silent. Yes, Alistair said clearly. I did. And this letter was part of Lord Thornhill's conspiracy? It was. So your wife, Lady Evelyn, was innocent of the accusations made against her? Completely innocent. The letter was a fabrication designed to destabilize me politically. It succeeded because I chose to believe it without investigating. Why would you believe such accusations without proof? This was the moment. The choice between protecting his reputation or telling the truth. Because I was arrogant, Alistair said. I had built my entire identity on being right, on being in control, on never being made a fool. When the letter arrived, when it suggested my wife had betrayed me, my first instinct wasn't to trust her. It was to protect my pride. So I chose suspicion over faith. I chose my ego over my marriage. And I destroyed the best thing in my life because I was too much of a coward to ask questions. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. That's quite an admission, Your Grace. It's the truth. And the inquiry deserves truth, not convenient lies. Where's Lady Evelyn now? Building a life for herself. One she created through her own strength and will, without my help or my name. Do you regret what you did? Every single day. The questioning moved on, but the damage, or the healing, was done. By the time Alistair finished his testimony, the papers were already running with headlines. Duke Wren admits destroying marriage. Nobleman's public confession stuns Parliament. He didn't care. The truth was out. All of it. The inquiry concluded a week later with sweeping reforms. 14 arrests, new oversight on magistrates, stricter rules on political financing. Thornhill's entire network dismantled. And Alistair, expected to be politically destroyed by his confession, found something unexpected happened instead. Respect. Not from everyone. Not from the old guard who valued appearances over honesty, but from younger lords, from reform-minded commons, from people who'd watched him stand up and admit his failures publicly. You're becoming a liability, one of his older colleagues warned him. This honesty campaign, it makes the rest of us look bad. Good, Alistair replied. Maybe we all need to look bad for a while. Might make us better. He returned north 3 days after the inquiry ended, exhausted and uncertain what he'd find. Evelyn was waiting at the gate. She'd seen the papers. Read every word of his testimony. She stood there in a simple gray dress, hair pulled back, eyes red like she'd been crying. You told them everything, she said as he dismounted. You asked for honesty. That's what honesty looks like. You destroyed your reputation. My reputation was built on lies and pride. I'm better off without it. Alistair, do you know what the worst part of that testimony was? He closed the distance between them. It wasn't the hostile questions or the public humiliation. It was having to say out loud, in front of hundreds of people, exactly how badly I failed you. Having to admit that I took the woman I loved and broke her because I was too afraid to trust. That's what killed me, Evelyn, not the politics, not the scandal, just the truth of what I did. She was crying openly now. You stubborn, impossible, infuriating man. I know. You're supposed to protect yourself, not throw yourself on a sword for principle. I learned that from you too. I hate you. No, you don't. I want to hate you. I know, but you don't. She hit his chest, not hard, just a frustrated thump. Why do you have to make this so difficult? Because easy isn't real, and I want something real with you, even if it's difficult. We're going to fight about stupid things, about important things. We're going to hurt each other. Probably. And I'm going to doubt you sometimes, going to wonder if you really changed or if this is temporary. That's fair. I'll doubt myself too. Then why try? Why risk it? Because the alternative is living without you. And I've tried that. It's not living, it's just existing. And I'm done existing, Evelyn. I want to live with you in whatever messy, complicated, difficult way we can build together. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out something small, her wedding ring, the one she'd refused to take back, the one he'd left at her gate months ago. I kept it, she said quietly, told myself it was just a piece of metal, that it didn't mean anything anymore, but I couldn't bring myself to sell it or throw it away. Evelyn, I'm not putting it back on. Not yet. Maybe not ever. That ring belonged to people we used to be. If we're building something new, maybe we need new symbols. What are you saying? I'm saying I love you. Still. Again. I don't know which. But I love you. And I'm willing to try building something with you. Not a marriage like we had. Something better. Something honest. I'll take it. Whatever it is. However you want to build it. She slipped the ring back into her pocket. Then she took his hand. Come inside. We have a lot to figure out. They spent the night talking about what they wanted, what they feared, what boundaries they needed, about splitting time between London and the estate, about her maintaining her independence and him supporting it, about being partners instead of husband and wife in the traditional sense. "I want you to court me," Evelyn said around midnight, curled up in a chair by the fire. "Properly. Like you should have the first time." "How do you mean?" "I mean, I want to know who you actually are. Not the Duke, not the politician, just Alistair. I want to hear about your childhood, your dreams, the things that scare you at 3 in the morning. I want to build a foundation of actual knowledge instead of just attraction and hope. I can do that. And I want to court you back. Tell you about me. About who I am now, not who I was when we married. I'd like that very much. It'll take time. We have time." She smiled. "Do we? You're a duke with responsibilities. I'm an estate owner with a business to run. How do we make this work? Carefully, intentionally, by choosing each other every day instead of just assuming we belong together." "That sounds exhausting." "Probably, but also real." "Real?" she repeated. "I like that." 3 months passed. Months of letters exchanged when they were apart. Months of long conversations when they were together. Months of learning each other again. Or maybe for the first time. Alistair learned that Evelyn hated mushrooms but would eat them to be polite. That she could do complex mathematics in her head. That she sang off key when she thought no one was listening. That she was terrified of losing her independence again. Evelyn learned that Alistair had nightmares about the night he cast her out. That he'd been desperately lonely as a child in a house full of servants but no real family. That he was trying to learn to be vulnerable and failing more often than he succeeded. That he still carried her ring in his pocket like a talisman. They fought. About politics, about money, about his tendency to make decisions without consulting her and her habit of shutting him out when she was upset. They fought, and then they talked through it, learning that conflict didn't have to end in destruction. And slowly, so slowly Alistair almost didn't notice it happening, they fell in love again. Not the desperate, consuming love of their first marriage. This was steadier, deeper, built on truth instead of illusion. 6 months after the inquiry, on a cold November evening, Evelyn found him in the estate library reviewing parliamentary reports. "I have something for you," she said. She held out a small box. Alistair opened it. Inside was a ring, simple gold, no jewels, engraved with new words. Veritas et fortitudo. Truth and courage. "It's not a wedding ring," Evelyn said quickly. "It's just a symbol of what we're building, of the values we want at the center of whatever this is. It's perfect. You don't have to wear it." He slid it onto his finger. It fit perfectly. "I made one for myself, too." She showed him her left hand where an identical ring sat. "I figured if we're doing this, building something new, we should have symbols that reflect who we actually are. Truth and courage. It's what we needed the first time, what we lacked. So maybe if we keep it front and center this time, we won't make the same mistakes. Hopefully." She sat down next to him. "Alistair, I've been thinking." "About?" "About what we call this, what we are to each other. We're still legally married, but we don't act like the typical husband and wife. We live separately most of the time, manage our own affairs, maintain our independence. But we're not just friends either. What do you want to call it?" "I don't know. Partners? Companions? Something that acknowledges we're choosing each other without pretending we're something we're not." "How about this?" Alistair said. "We're Alistair and Evelyn. We're building a life together on our own terms. The labels don't matter as much as the reality." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "When did you get so wise?" "When I lost everything and had to figure out what actually mattered." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the fire burn low. Outside, the estate settled into winter. Inside, 2 people who'd destroyed and rebuilt each other were finding their way to something that looked almost like peace. It wasn't perfect. It was messy and complicated and still fragile in places. But it was real. And real, they'd both learned, was worth more than perfect ever could be. A year after the inquiry, Evelyn hosted another celebration, this one for the completion of the school she'd built for the tenant children. Alistair attended, watched her cut the ribbon, listened to her speech about education and opportunity. Afterward, when the crowd had dispersed, she found him by the gate. "Thank you for coming. Wouldn't miss it. I know you had sessions in Parliament today. You didn't have to ride all this way. Yes, I did. He caught her hand, brought it to his lips, kissed the ring she wore. This is what matters. You. What you're building. I'll always make time for what matters. Alistair Wren, are you going soft on me? Completely. Hopelessly. Is it working? Maybe. She pulled him closer, kissed him properly. Yes, it's working. Good. Because I'm not stopping. I wouldn't want you to. They walked back toward the school together, hand in hand, and Alistair thought about the man he'd been 2 years ago. Arrogant. Controlling. So convinced he was right that he'd destroyed everything good in his life. That man was gone. Dead and buried with Thornhill and Pascoe and all the other ghosts of his past. What remained was something harder to define, but infinitely more valuable. A man learning to be honest, to be vulnerable, to build instead of control. A man who'd lost everything and found something better in the ruins. Do you think we'll make it? Evelyn asked quietly. Long term? I think we'll fight. We'll struggle. We'll have moments where we want to give up. That's not a yes. But we'll also choose each other, every day. We'll communicate instead of assuming. We'll trust instead of doubting. And yes, I think we'll make it. Not because it's easy, but because we're both stubborn enough to fight for something real. That's the most unromantic romantic thing you've ever said. I'm getting good at those. She laughed. The sound carried across the grounds, bright and free and full of joy, and Alistair realized something profound. He was happy. Not the shallow, easy happiness of ignorance, the deep, hard-won happiness of someone who'd faced their worst self and chosen to become better. 2 years later, they held a second wedding. Not because they needed to. They were already legally married and nothing would change legally, but because they wanted to, because they wanted to stand in front of their people and make new promises. Better ones. The ceremony was small, held at the estate with tenants and workers and friends filling the rebuilt house. No London elite, no political maneuvering, just people who actually cared about them. Evelyn wore blue instead of white. Alistair wore no ceremonial robes, just a simple suit. They wrote their own vows. I promise to trust you, Evelyn said, her voice steady even as tears streamed down her face. Even when it's hard, even when doubt creeps in, I promise to talk to you instead of shutting you out, to be honest about my fears and my needs, to build this life with you as a partner, not as someone who needs rescuing or managing. I promise to believe in you, Alistair replied, his own eyes wet, always, without question. I promise to ask instead of assuming, to be vulnerable instead of proud, to love you not for who I want you to be, but for who you actually are. And I promise that if I ever fail you again, I'll spend the rest of my life making it right. They exchanged rings, not the original wedding band still tucked away in a drawer somewhere, but new ones, matching the rings they already wore, truth and courage. When they kissed, the room erupted in cheers. That night, lying in bed in the estate's master bedroom, the one Evelyn had designed herself when rebuilding the house, she turned to him. Do you ever regret it? How we got here? All the pain and destruction? Alistair thought about it. Really thought about it. I regret hurting you, every day. I regret the time we lost, the trust I broke. But do I regret where we ended up? He pulled her closer. No, because we're better now, stronger, more honest. We wouldn't be here if we hadn't gone through hell first. That's a terrible lesson. Most good lessons are. She was quiet for a moment, then, I forgive you. The words were soft, simple, but they hit like thunder. Evelyn, I forgive you for that night, for not trusting me, for throwing me out, for all of it. She met his eyes. I've been holding on to it, using it like armor to protect myself. But I don't need that anymore. You've proven who you are now, who you're choosing to be. And I forgive you. I don't deserve, maybe not, but I'm giving it anyway. Because holding on to it hurts me more than it hurts you, and I'm done hurting. She kissed him softly. We're starting fresh. Actually fresh this time. No more ghosts, no more guilt, just us, moving forward. Alistair held her, feeling something he'd been carrying for 2 years finally release. The guilt didn't disappear entirely. It would probably never disappear entirely, but it transformed into something manageable, something he could live with. Thank you, he whispered, Don't thank me. Just keep being the man you've become. I will, every day, for the rest of my life. And he meant it. Years passed. They built a life that defied easy categorization. Evelyn ran her estate with increasing success, becoming known throughout the region as a fair employer and shrewd businesswoman. Alistair continued his work in Parliament, championing reforms and earning a reputation as a man who valued truth over political convenience. They split their time between London and the estate, spent weeks apart sometimes, pursuing their separate goals. But they always came back to each other, always chose each other. They fought about money, about politics, about whose turn it was to travel to whom, but they fought fair now, talked through problems instead of letting them fester, trusted each other enough to be angry without being destructive. They built something that wasn't a traditional marriage but was somehow more than one, a partnership based on mutual respect, honest communication, and the hard-won knowledge that love wasn't about possession or control. It was about choosing someone every day, even when it was difficult, especially when it was difficult. 10 years after that night in the storm, Evelyn stood at the gate of her estate, now expanded to include 3 adjacent properties and employing over 100 people, and watched Alistair ride up the lane. He was graying at the temples now, still handsome but weathered, marked by time and choices. She was different too, stronger, more settled in who she was. The scars on her arms from the fire had faded to silvery lines. The scars on her heart had healed into something that made her wiser instead of bitter. "You're early," she called as he dismounted. "Couldn't stay away? Missed you too much. You saw me 3 days ago. 3 days too long." She laughed, crossed to him, let him pull her into an embrace that felt like coming home. How was Parliament? Exhausting, infuriating, the usual. He pulled back to look at her. But worth it. We passed the Education Reform Bill. Every child in England, regardless of class or gender, guaranteed access to basic schooling. That's incredible. It's what you've been doing here for years. I just finally convinced the rest of them it was a good idea. You give me too much credit. Impossible. I could never give you enough credit for everything you've taught me. She shook her head, smiling. Still smooth after all these years. I try. They walked toward the house together, the same house that had burned and been rebuilt, the same property where she'd started over with nothing, the same place where they'd found their way back to each other. Inside, the halls were full of life. Workers coming and going, children from the school running past, a visiting merchant discussing contracts with Evelyn's manager. The estate was alive in a way the old Wren estate had never been, full of purpose and community instead of just ceremony. That evening, sitting by the fire in the study, Evelyn pulled out something she'd been saving. "I have something to show you." She handed him a letter. He recognized his own handwriting immediately. The note he'd sent with the ring, all those years ago when he'd first found her estate. "This was always yours. If you ever change your mind, you know where to find me." You kept this?" he asked. "I kept everything. Every letter you sent during the courtship, every note. I have them all in a box upstairs." "Why?" "Because I wanted to remember, not the pain. I've let that go. But the journey, how we got from broken to whole, how you became someone worth trusting again, how I became someone strong enough to trust." She took his hand. "We did the hard work, Alistair, both of us, and I never want to forget what that took." "Neither do I." She leaned against him, and they sat in comfortable silence. Outside, the sun set over the estate she'd built, over the life they'd created together, over the future they were still building day by day, choice by choice. It wasn't the fairy tale ending people expected. It was better, because it was real, messy and complicated and hard-won and absolutely, perfectly real. And as Alistair held the woman he'd lost and found and chosen every day since, he understood something fundamental. Some losses can't be undone. Some mistakes are too big to erase. But if you're willing to do the work, to be honest, to be vulnerable, to choose growth over pride, sometimes you get something better than what you lost. Sometimes you get a second chance. And sometimes, if you're very lucky and very stubborn and very willing to fight for it, that second chance becomes something worth more than the first ever could have been. Evelyn looked up at him. "What are you thinking? That I love you, that I'm grateful, that I'm the luckiest man alive." Good answer. I've had a lot of practice. She kissed him, soft and slow and full of promise. And in that moment, in that house built from ashes, with this woman who'd rebuilt herself and him in the process, Alistair Wren finally understood what it meant to be whole. Not perfect, not undamaged, but whole. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.